The world is full of contradictions, but truth does not fracture. Christianity, the faith that shaped civilization, now exists in a thousand diluted forms, with each claiming authenticity and with each contradicting the others. But if Christianity is true, then it has only one correct form, and that form is not a matter of opinion, it is a matter of history. Christianity stands on a foundation placed 2,000 years ago, yet today it is divided into three major branches: Protestantism, Catholicism, and Orthodoxy, each of which contradicts the others. Therefore, if the Christian faith is true, then one of these must be the correct expression of it. Protestantism is 500 years old, but Christianity is 2,000 years old. The math is simple. A system that only emerged in the 16th century cannot claim to be the original faith, for the same reason that people who are younger than you cannot be you. It is a reaction and a rebellion against what came before. It is a rejection and it is not a continuation. This alone disqualifies Protestantism. Therefore, the real debate is not between three branches, but between two: Catholicism and Orthodoxy. Both trace their lineage back to the apostles, and both claim to be the true church. Both have preserved the traditions of the early faith, or so it would seem. But appearances can deceive. One has changed, and one has distorted what it once was. Those two are one and the same, and they are Catholicism. Catholicism is ancient. It carries the weight of history. Unlike Protestantism, it has apostolic succession and an unbroken line of bishops tracing back to the apostles themselves. But history alone is not proof of truth. A tree may be old, but if its roots have rotted, then it will fall. The Catholic Church was once the true church. That is not in dispute. But over centuries, it took on foreign elements, ideas that did not belong, and the culprit was not scripture, nor was it the teachings of the early Christians, but instead, the culprit was philosophy. The Western Church absorbed the rationalism of the Greeks, and, in so doing, created the system of scholastic theology, which was most famously developed by Thomas Aquinas. Aquinas attempted to reconcile Christianity with Aristotelian logic, and in so doing, he transformed faith into a system of intellectual proofs. Christianity became less about divine mystery and more about human reason. This shift created a new kind of church, one that debated with God rather than worshiping Him, one that sought to explain the infinite rather than to submit to it. And with this change came new doctrines, foreign to the faith of the early church. Papal supremacy elevated the Bishop of Rome beyond what the first Christians ever permitted. Purgatory and indulgences introduced a transactional element to salvation which had been unheard of in the ancient church. And the Immaculate Conception of Mary, a doctrine unknown for over 1,000 years, was proclaimed as necessary truth. These were not minor developments. They reshaped Catholicism into something unrecognizable to its own past, and the faith of the apostles had been altered, redefined, and rationalized. Catholicism, although ancient, had become something new. It was no longer the church it once was, and if Christianity is true, then the true church must be the one that remains unchanged, because it acquired its standards and practices directly from God. That church is not Catholicism. That church is Orthodoxy. History reveals the truth. If Christianity is true, then the true church must be the one that has remained unchanged since the apostles. Protestantism fails immediately because it is too new, and Catholicism fails because it has been altered. Orthodoxy alone remains what it always was. The Orthodox Church preserves the faith of the apostles, not as a relic of the past, but as a living tradition. It does not attempt to rationalize the mysteries of God, nor does it bend to the philosophies of men. It does not reform itself to fit the times, and its liturgy, sacraments, and doctrines have all remained unchanged. It has not introduced foreign concepts, nor centralized power in a single man, nor rewritten its theology to suit intellectual trends. It has remained what it was from the beginning, the Church of the Apostles, unchanged and unbroken. Truth does not change. If Christianity is true, then its church must be continuous, unbroken, and unwavering. The faith delivered to the apostles cannot be rewritten. It cannot be adapted to fit new philosophies, nor can it be reshaped to suit modern preferences. It must remain what it always was. Protestantism fails this test immediately because its core principle is that doctrine is subject to personal interpretation. But a faith that fractures into 1,000 competing sects cannot claim to be the one true church. The apostles never envisioned a Christianity where every man was his own authority, and whenever that position might have been challenged, the person who challenged it was denounced as a heretic. Meanwhile, Catholicism, although ancient, also fails. It has a continuous institution, but it lacks a continuous faith. The Church of the early centuries did not teach papal supremacy, it did not teach indulgences, and it did not teach the Immaculate Conception. These doctrines were later additions created to fit the logic of the scholastics rather than the teachings of the apostles. A church that alters its own beliefs over time is not the unchanging Church of Christ. Only Orthodoxy passes this test. Its doctrine has never been rewritten, and the faith of the first Christians is the faith that it holds today. Its structure remains as it was in the beginning. Bishops, patriarchs, councils, none claiming absolute authority. Its liturgy, its sacraments, and its traditions remain intact, preserved for 2 millennia without corruption. A church that claims to be the true church must be able to point back to history and say, "We were there and we are as we were." Orthodoxy alone can say this. Christianity has many faces today, but truth does not multiply. The faith given to the apostles is not a shifting thing that bends to the will of time and of culture. It is unchanging. And if Christianity is true, then its true form must be the one that has never changed, because that is the one that was given by Jesus to the apostles. And when Jesus gave the faith to the apostles, he was not wrong. Today, Christianity has many faces, but truth does not multiply. The faith Jesus gave to the apostles is not a shifting thing that bends to the will of time and of culture. It is unchanging. And if Christianity is true, then its true form must be the one that has never changed. And Protestantism is a modern creation, a reaction rather than a continuation. It is self-refuting and built on division rather than unity. It cannot be the true church. Meanwhile, Catholicism, although ancient, has rewritten its own beliefs, rationalizing the mysteries of the faith rather than preserving them. It has added doctrines foreign to the early church, and that leaves Orthodoxy alone. The Orthodox Church alone has remained what it always was. Its doctrines, its liturgy, and its structure are all unchanged and preserved. It is not a branch of Christianity. It is Christianity as Jesus himself taught it. If Christianity is true, then Orthodoxy is the one true church. And if you want to follow the faith of the apostles, then you have to follow the church that has not rewritten itself and which has an ancient origin. The faith that has stood against the tide of time is Orthodox Christianity. And if you found this argument compelling, then make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment down below. I'm Gene Botkin. Lord have mercy.